we start the seminar or the conversation on economy on today, and I introduce the panelists who are with us. I would like to go first to the president of Copair, who is a co-organizing institute today for the seminar. So, the president, Ms. Amna Munawar, I would like to hand over the mic to you to introduce Copair and the purpose of the seminar.
Thank you very much, Fahad. Thank you very much. Honorable Dr. Salman Shah Sahab, Honorable, who is the former Minister of Finance and an experienced economist, Honorable Ambassador Nadeem Riaz Sahab, Dr. Ikramul Haq Sahab, Dr. Khan Hassan Najib Sahab, and Dr. Fahad Ali. Assalamu alaikum, and I welcome all of you at this webinar on a very, very important topic: economic security of Pakistan, challenges and strategies. Post-COVID ridden economy of Pakistan, we all are seeing, with so many socio-economic disparities, which are really creating negative impact and moving us towards economic instability, issues of national cohesion and nation building. And devaluation of rupee is further creating chaos in the society. Copair, as a strategic think tank, with the collaboration of other think tanks, is working on the policy guidelines and framework. Although before us, many other organizations and the governments took different initiatives, but every time there is a new challenge: how to settle our economic issues, how to uplift our economy, how to improve our society. So in order to mitigate these economic risks and vulnerabilities, I request all the worthy panelists that how and what methodology and what policy framework we should adopt, and what should be the way forward. Should we move towards Charter of Economy by dialogue forum, engaging all key stakeholders, including representative of the political parties, or advocate our case for humanitarian assistance and climate justice by addressing international donors and friendly countries? I request speakers to suggest us how we can become a resilient nation, how we should depend on our self-sustained economy, and how we improve our domestic economy, and finally, how we strengthen our foreign economic relations with our other countries. Thank you very much, all of you for joining us today. And thank you, Institute of Regional Studies, to join this initiative. Inshallah, we'll share the report with you and the final our policy briefs after a few days. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Amna. And with that, I would like to introduce our panelists today. We have with us Dr. Salman Shah, who needs no introduction, has served as an advisor to Finance Minister in the federal government, has served as a caretaker Finance Minister, has also served as advisor on finance to Chief Minister Punjab, and I think has also represented Punjab in National Finance Commission negotiations in the past decade or so. We have with us Dr. Ikramul Haq, advocate Supreme Court. He is one of the leading experts in tax and tax laws in Pakistan, has been writing consistently for the past 2 decades on issues pertaining to tax and tax compliance in various newspapers, including the News, Daily Times, and Dawn. So we would actually be speaking to him about sort of Pakistan's attempts to reform its tax laws and tax structure. Particularly, we have Dr. Khan Najib with us, who is a macroeconomist, has worked with the IMF, has also worked as an advisor to the federal government, to the previous, the PMLN government, previous PMLN government, and has also writes for newspapers frequently. My name is Fahad Ali. I am also an economist, and I am also Dean of Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at Information Technology University in Lahore. So, Dr. Salman, let me just start the conversation with you. And I think we've got the pointers with us as laid out by Amna in the beginning. But I think I would, before I asked you about sort of what can be done about the economy, I would like to hear from you how you see the current economic situation and how has it evolved in the past 6 months, particularly. I think one of the questions that actually weighs very heavily on our minds and sort of minds of general Pakistanis as well is sort of how really bad is the economic situation, and if anything can be done at all in the immediate future to ease the burden or the inflationary burden on the common man. So let's start with that. How do you see the economic situation as of now, and how close it is Pakistan to an all-out crisis?
Yeah, I would like to tackle your question, which is a very important question, is to spend about a minute or two on the current international environment in which Pakistan finds itself. Then we'll talk about the domestic situation, as pointed out by you, that what are the challenges and particularly what is happening. And then maybe sketch out what we should really be doing to start getting out of this mess in a way. So to start with, the international environment has never been more uncertain, at least in my lifetime. And I have seen many ups and downs happening in the economy. और इस वक्त जो uncertainty है, it is at its peak in a global sense. So we have a couple of things happening at the same time. It started off with the corona pandemic, then the monetary easing because of that, supply chain disruptions because of that. And then the super corona was not only just the pandemic itself, but also what happened to the global economy. And then when we were just getting out of this lockdowns and resumption of the global trade, and we saw that there was massive dislocation of logistics and lots of shortages. And then on top of it, we had the Ukrainian conflict. So almost the perfect storm has engulfed the world. The Ukrainian conflict, it exacerbated the problems of supply chain. It really got the energy prices through the roof, and food items, which were another very important global commodity, it went also became inaccessible to many developing countries. And this became a very big issue. Now, following all of this, the central banks globally have started reversing the monetary easing policies, and now they're focused on inflation because there's a lot of fallout of the pandemic and the Ukrainian war, and inflation is, in double digits in Europe, and we've never seen such inflation in America for the last at least 30 years. So the interest rate environment, the interest rates are going up, monetary tightening is happening, the dollar is becoming like a safe haven, and it's increasing its value all across. And in all of this, we see that countries like Pakistan, which are very energy dependent, very import dependent, dependent on food imports, they are suffering an unprecedented external shock because our current account balances just went out of whack. They were already under pressure, but with this energy business and with the commodity, it reminded me of the 2007 crisis, the financial and energy crisis at that time. And this time also we saw this thing happening. And along with this, if we look at also the geopolitics of the world, the US-China rivalry is impacting how the world is responding to many events. China is also kind of firming up because of the Ukrainian conflict. And so we see that lots of countries like Pakistan are going to be affected by these kinds of developments. Then across the border, we see Modi is the hyper nationalist, and Modi also trying to have a narrative in India which is very, very problematic for Pakistan, and particularly his crackdown on the minorities and his crackdown in Kashmir, and almost putting Pakistan on the knife edge in terms of our relationship with India. So in this scenario, we are looking at what is the economic security challenges of Pakistan and what strategy we should be following. So now coming to Pakistan, we know that we have had, we are in the 23rd kind of IMF program, and this program also is very tentative in terms of whether we'll be able to complete it or not. In the middle, we have had a change of finance ministers. Miftah Saab has been backed off, and Ishaq Dar has come in. And now we know that Ishaq Dar is not very keen on the kinds of things which the IMF program really wants us to do in terms of bridging our fiscal gaps, and also floating the currency, and let the market do the work over there. And already there are some slippages from the latest agreement which Miftah Ismail was able to negotiate. So now we have to see how this he's in Washington right now in the winter kind of gathering over there of the World Bank and the IMF, and trying to get some relief from the IMF, which he may get because of the unprecedented floods which have happened in Pakistan, and which have by some initial assessments damaged about 1/3 of the area in Pakistan, and $30 billion is being put as the price tag on the destruction of infrastructure and the crops, etc. So it gives us kind of another opportunity that the world, we can beg from the world that they should come and help us. And so far, I think the response has been mixed. I mean, we have seen that World Bank and Asian Development Bank are committing some funds, but those are basically funds which would be diverted from other areas in our programs with them, and maybe some additional loans, which will be useful for Pakistan to bridge the financing gap which we see happening. The other thing is that given all of this scenario, our main issue really is how are we going to meet the gross financing needs this year and subsequently in next year, and at least for the next 5 or 10 years, because the external debt we have is around 120 to 130 billion dollars. About 20 billion a year needs to be refinanced, plus the interest payments on that, which really means that we need to have access to the capital markets of the world. The rates on our bonds are such that it shows that the capital markets have shut their door on us. The yields, I've never seen such yields on the Pakistani bond, particularly if you look at the one maturing in December. I mean, you could earn on an annualized basis over 100% yield on it. And then even longer term bonds are given, are yielding 25, 30%, and so on. So refinancing the bonds would become very, very difficult. And the IMF has basically said that, look, we have done what we could, but now it's your politics which is not making this thing work out. The international markets are not happy with the kind of polarization in the country, and then the country can become a Sri Lanka type social breakdown, which would be very damaging to the international investor. So I think that the main issue which we are talking about is are we out of the woods as far as the default is concerned? So I think that, to me, that would be the number one thing. Are we out of that default range? And if it is so, then what is the indicator that we are out? And to my mind, it's the yields on our securities which will determine that. The second part is the part which you talked about, that what do we do with the inflation which is rampant in the country. Yes, it is externally driven through the energy prices, through electricity prices, through the food prices, and the devaluation of the rupee, which has happened. And this transition, we have kind of moved from probably a stabler inflation environment to almost a hyperinflation environment. And we have been able to manage it to a certain degree that people are not really out on the streets yet, but it seems that they are just very close to that kind of a situation. And that will probably continue unless there is a dramatic fall in energy prices and the food commodities, they start to come down, which there is indication that some like vegetable oil, etc., may come down. So I think that in that sense, the inflationary thing would be that we'll have to manage the supply side as well as we can. But in the longer term, which I'll just put this word in so that we can open it up for discussion, that on the one side, we are talking about stability and ensuring that the IMF program stays on track, ensuring that we try to bridge the deficits to the best of our abilities. But in the medium term, that's where I think the real issue is, that we have an economy which is an inward-looking economy. It has evolved over time to become an inward-looking economy based on the incentive structures of the economy. And now we are not only an inward-looking economy, but highly dependent on imported energy. So the first thing is, what do we do about the energy? Can we get out of these long-term contracts? Some of these contracts are highly detrimental to us, and but they are 30-year contracts. So how do you get out of that? How do you get into alternate energy and other kinds of things?
Thank you, Dr.
So I think in the medium term, you need to tackle your energy crisis, and in the medium to longer term, you really need to go to
the other panelists. Let me go to the other panelists, and then I'll come back to you. I think you have summarized the international situation particularly well. I think one thing that I would like to actually add to what you have said, कि एक सबका जो बहुत सब लोगों का फेयर था कि डॉक्टर साहब वापस आए हैं, तो well, if he'll bring back the old kind of policies that he pursued in the previous regime with him. And I think what a lot of people don't appreciate that, or don't understand that, Darsa was able to follow that kind of policies in his previous government because of a very supportive international climate as well, right? So it's so like you pointed out just in the very beginning, कि जो अभी international situation, economic situation, it is so full of uncertainty कि उस case उस पूरी international environment में अब दोबारा से उस किस्म की policies को pursue करना जो है वो कोई बहुत ज़्यादा शायद दानिशमंदी भी ना हो. So I actually would like to go to Dr. Ikramul Haq now. Dr. Dr. Salman Shah is actually sort of towards the end, what he was saying about sort of, how to shelter the common man in Pakistan, a common person in Pakistan, from the inflationary pressures. And I think उसमें एक बहुत important चीज़ ये होगी कि इस रियासत जो है वो अपनी social protection की policies या social protection का net जो है उसको कितने effectively implement कर सकती है और उसको कितने effectively expand कर सकती है. So it's not just about sort of including the number of people who are part of that social net, but also increasing the size of the help that they receive as part of that social safety net. And I think उसके अंदर एक बहुत जो important चीज होगी वो ये कि government जो है वो उसके लिए fiscal space कैसे create कर पाती है. And I think part of those of the answer to that lies in sort of improving our tax collection and sort of obviously managing our expenditures as well. आप कैसे देखते हैं, डू यू थिंक कि इस इकोनॉमी के अंदर जो आजकल हालात हैं और खासतौर पे पोस्ट फ्लड्स के अंदर ये हुकूमत के लिए करना आसान होगा या नहीं होगा, या अगर वो करना चाहती कर सकती है तो क्या किस तरीके से वो अपनी फिस्कल स्पेस को इम्प्रूव कर सकती है ताकि एक जो उसका पर्टिकुलर एस्पेक्ट है सोशल सेफ्टी नेट्स उसको इम्प्रूव किया जा सके.
Thank you very much, Fahad. I think that basically our tax system is very oppressive. It is one of the reasons that we have so much inflationary pressure even on e-tables and other things. I am concerned with indirect taxes that we impose at transactional stage, and we don't wait for even that goods should take, there should be exchange of hands. So no matter what tax collection FPR shows, the effect remains over the period of time that it's overwhelming coming from indirect taxation. And in this scenario, our fiscal deficit is always increasing. So tax system is neither bridging this huge fiscal deficit, nor it is helping towards growth. So the kind of social protection we are talking about cannot take place in this scenario, because for that we require fundamental structural reforms, which we have been talking about for last many years. But unfortunately, even under IMF programs and others, I don't want to blame them, but our own rulers, they are not ready to implement these fundamental reforms that can help society and as well as economy to grow. We, of course, need inclusive development and equitable growth. But tax system is one of the areas which is impediment in this way, which is very strange that we have a high rate of taxes. Like we have GST, which is in a VAT mode, 17%, but in actual, maybe it is 4 or 5% the effective rate of tax. But then the refunds and other things. So state, they only want to collect taxes, but they are not ready to have any quid pro quo for that for the masses. So on the one hand, these taxes are, as I earlier said, are not helping us towards growth, and on the other, they are also creating hardship for the common people. This is the dilemma that we are facing, no matter whether we are in IMF program or not. This is for our own benefit that we should go for fundamental structural reforms. So my viewpoint is, and I will not take long time, that energy and food securities are fundamental of economic security for any country and national security. But these cannot be achieved unless we have growth-oriented export-oriented growth, and for that, tax system must help towards that rather than creating impediment in way of this approach. Till today, whatever the government we have, whether civilian or military, they have not tried to understand that this is the main thing that is hindering us to go towards proper growth and to then provide a social security network to our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. I think your point about Pakistani tax system not helping economic growth is on point, and I think particularly जो आखिरी वाला आपने जो point किया कि we charge the general sales tax at 14-15%, but हमारा effective tax rate जो है is merely 4%. So one of the very obvious policy change that you can bring in is that just reduce the policy rate to 4%. जिसके आप effective देते ही हैं उतना ही देते हैं, अगर आप उतना ही charge करना शुरू करते हैं, तो you might be able to rope in a lot more people who might be willing to pay a lower tax rather than sort of use use a 14% or 15% tax rate to just discipline firms और उनके लिए एक वो carrot और डंडे की तरह ही आप इस्तेमाल करते रहे. So I think ये मुझे सबसे बड़ा जो होता है कि simple जो policies हैं हमारे यहाँ उनके ऊपर भी हम कोई खास movement नहीं कर पाते. I would like to come to you, Dr. Khakan, now, and I think one of the things that Dr. Salman Shah mentioned in his response कि पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी जो है वो बहुत इनवर्ड लुकिंग होगी. I mean, if you look at the numbers, I mean, I can see where he is coming from, but if you actually look at the numbers, we जो international trade है, both exports and imports actually form a very substantial part of your GDP. It's I think collectively they're around 25 to 30% of your total GDP. So so I mean that's not a small fraction of economy that you actually, or your GDP that you actually trade with the outside world. So लेकिन उसके बावजूद I can understand कि जी वो क्यों कहना चाह रहे हैं शायद कि जी अच्छा पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी जो है is it something that you agree with? Is that an assessment that you agree with? And I think, and if you do, why do you think that Pakistan's economy is inward looking? And if you do not, then my question would be that sort of what are the then what are the ways in which we can actually improve our exports in the medium to long term, particularly in the medium term जिसमें हमारे पास crisis जो है वो अपनी शिद्दत से कायम ही रहेगा, उसमें शायद कमी नहीं आए.
Thank you, Fahad, and thank you, Copair, for having me. I'm going to take 1 minute and explain what I think really immediately क्या हो रहा है. देखें, पाकिस्तान ये जरूर है कि पाकिस्तान 23वां IMF प्रोग्राम कर रहा है, बट ये याद रखिए कि पाकिस्तान ने इन 23 में से कभी भी सवाए 2016 के Pakistan has never ever completed a single program that Pakistan joined with the IMF. That is an extremely important notion to remember. The only program Pakistan completed was the 2016, and as Fahad said rightly, yes, I anchored that program with the current finance minister. I was also present on the table when Pakistan signed the current program of 2019 and stayed with the few reviews as well. Currently, Pakistan has to ensure that we stay with the fund program. IMF as an anchor is extremely necessary to ride out FY23 for Pakistan. Otherwise, it would be difficult to get what Dr. Salman rightly pointed out, the gross financing needs of Pakistan, which are $34 billion for FY23. So what is crucial is that we stay this course. Our second line of defense is the multilaterals and the bilaterals. And our third line of defense is a rescheduling with the bilaterals. This has just happened in COVID. We got $3.7 billion of G20 rescheduling. And then if we can ride out this time unscathed, that would be itself an achievement. The disorderly movements in the markets are not only in the FX markets, Pakistan's international bonds and Pakistan's credit default swaps, which are resulting in the Moody's downgrade despite being in a fund program. But as I keep saying, Pakistan is in a perpetual dollar liquidity crunch. This was the hypothesis I took in the news on Sunday. And that in the short term has gotten heightened, and we must rise to the occasion to meet that dollar liquidity crunch. If we get the friends of Pakistan to give the 4 billion, if we get the 7 billion rollovers that are required, if we get the multilateral money coming in, this is prior to the floods. We had a gross financing need of 31 billion. Today it stands at about 35 billion. Now that takes me into what Fahad asked me on the export side. Pakistan's dollar liquidity crunch is heightened, but it is perpetual also. How is it perpetual? In 2018, Pakistan crossed the 5% threshold And I keep saying the Pakistan economy has got wired in a way that whenever we cross the 5% threshold, we run into a balance of payments challenge. In 22, we crossed the 5% threshold to 6%. We ran into another balance of payments challenge. So now, why have we wired our economy to that way? Number one is that our export to GDP, of course, is 10%, and our import to GDP is 25%. Now, when I look at similar countries, maybe the import to GDP doesn't bother me as much as my export to GDP does. So on that, let's see what is actually going on. See, Pakistan's perennial issue is that our cost of doing business has also gotten increased, and that hurts our exporters. Now, what is our cost of doing business? Our cost of doing business is mainly that our energy has gotten wired where we are paying in dollars to produce energy and selling the same in rupees to the people of Pakistan as well as to the industrial class, which then asks for subsidy or removing the cross subsidy that exists in the tariff structure. So the first order of business should be to do a surgery of our cost of doing business, and that being the energy sector. I'm afraid if we don't, we will end up in a crisis which will be unmanageable. The second part on exports, and that is the very basics, the 5 crops of Pakistan yields 1/3 compared to what the world's best are. Let me repeat that. The yields on the 5 staple crops of Pakistan are 1/3 of what the world's best do. For a country like Pakistan, where you're importing cotton to export stuff, and where you'll be importing $3 billion of cotton, you have to really think through your export strategy. So that is one. On the export side, very particularly, I am an Australian trained economist. So I'm not a very hi-fi export person. In Australia, we used to export 2 things. Pakistan has both of them. So let's put something new on the table besides going to manufacturing. Next Sunday, inshallah, you will read, or the Sunday after that, an article which I'm putting together, a paper which says rocks and crops. That's Australia's exports. Your rocks are buried in Balochistan and your crops are not yielding enough. You were able to utilize the 2 revolutions. The green revolution was the last one that you utilized. After that, you're going through a massive crisis in your agriculture. So it again brings me to that. The third thing is on the manufacturing side, we are not part of any global value chain. And that is where 5.2 million SMEs in Pakistan and your major credit, which you gave under turf, or actually most of your credit only went to the large scale manufacturing, and that's the concentration you have. 99% of industrial and commercial outfits in Pakistan are all SMEs. So you have to start rethinking on those lines. And then rocks and crops, your energy sector and your agriculture sector. This is what your medium-term outlook has to look. If we have to get out of, again, the basic hypothesis that I put forward to you, Fahad, which is Pakistan's dollar liquidity crunch has to end. If we have to even think of growing sustainably, manage the heightened one in the short time and manage the medium term or the longer one on the premise of improving the productivity base.
Let me add a question over here, Hakan. Thank you very much. Let me add a question over here. देखिए आप कह रहे हैं कि पाकिस्तान का जो मीडियम टर्म में, शॉर्ट टर्म में, इमीडिएट शॉर्ट टर्म में जो लिक्विडिटी क्रंच है, दैट्स एक्चुअली स्पॉट ऑन. पाकिस्तान के अंदर, एंड नॉट जस्ट लाइक पाकिस्तान, इनफैक्ट थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्रीज आर एक्चुअली नाउ रियलाइजिंग सिंस द फेड हैज स्टार्टेड रेजिंग इट्स इंटरेस्ट रेट कि डॉलर क्रंच जो है वो कितना को बड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो सकता है. But that dollar crunch is actually going to stay here for quite some time. आप देखेंगे पाकिस्तान में पाकिस्तान, अगर आप ये देखें कि पाकिस्तान की आपने भी, डॉक्टर सलमान शाह ने भी ये कहा कि हमारी जो इस साल की ग्रॉस फाइनेंशियल रिक्वायरमेंट है दैट्स $35 billion, सो इट हैज गॉन अप टू $35 billion. But that's actually the yearly financial requirement over the next 4 to 5 years. जो फरवरी के अंदर आर्टिकल 4 कंसल्टेशन की रिपोर्ट आई थी, उसके अंदर आईएमएफ ने 2026 तक जो पाकिस्तान की ग्रॉस फाइनेंशियल रिक्वायरमेंट थी वो तकरीबन कोई $150 बिलियन है ओवर द नेक्स्ट 4 years. So that comes out to be around $35 billion every year. एंड मैं तो अभी जो मैंने इस बार की जो ग्रॉस फाइनेंशियल उसमें भी वो चेंज नहीं हुई, लेकिन इस बार जो मुझे जो रिपोर्ट में जो बहुत ही astounding and sort of surprising चीज लगी है कि आईएमएफ ने बहुत कैजुअली वहां पे इंसर्ट कर दिया कि हम इसको फुलफिल कैसे करेंगे, एंड पार्ट $10 billion from next year every year till 2027 will come in terms of foreign direct investment to overcome this liquidity crunch. I mean, that's just a fairy tale. I mean, a country that has not raised $50 billion in foreign investment in the past 2 decades is expected to do it in the next 5 years. Right? So ये हमारा जो, so my question is कि ये अगर हमारा liquidity crunch जो है डॉलर्स का इतना शदीद है, तो वो इमीडिएट रन में कैसे पूरा होने वाला है? वो तो unless until we drastically cut down our exports, तो उसके अलावा कोई चीज नहीं है। और उसका एक्सपोर्ट को कट करने में हमारे पास एक बड़ा जो इम्पैक्ट होगा वो होगा कि आपकी इंडस्ट्री के ऊपर इट रिलाइज सो हेवीली ऑन रॉ मटेरियल। आई मीन आई जस्ट से वन पॉइंट एंड देन आई वुड लाइक टू गो बैक टू यू। आई मीन आई थिंक लोग बार बार हमें ये कहते रहते हैं मुझे कि जी अच्छा ये हमारे पास एनर्जी की इंपोर्ट्स बहुत ज्यादा है, एनर्जी की इंपोर्ट बहुत ज्यादा है, $9 billion की, एंड दैट्स ट्रू, दैट्स अ लॉट, बट व्हाट पीपल एक्चुअली आल्सो डू नॉट रियलाइज that we import $15 to $16 billion of raw material every year that we require to run our industry. And we don't have an alternative to that either in the short run. Right? So if we cut down on that, हमारी क्या एनर्जी का alternative source है नहीं, raw materials का alternative source है नहीं, तो हम ये डॉलर का जो लिक्विडिटी क्रंच है इसको कैसे ओवरकम करेंगे? एंड हेंस sort of उसके साथ जो सब्सिक्वेंट क्राइसिस चलते हैं उनको कैसे ओवरकम करेंगे?
तो फहद, आपने बहुत ही कलीदी बात जो है वो सामने रखी है। सबसे पहले ये है कि ये देखिए कि FY22 में आपका पेट्रोलियम प्रोडक्ट्स और एनर्जी का बिल $24 अरब था। अनटेनेबल पोजीशन है, जरूर था क्योंकि ब्रेंट और वो भी राइज किया था, पर आपकी क्वांटिटी भी बहुत बढ़ गई थी। मैंने बारहा, चूंकि मैं हर एक के साथ एंगेज रहता हूं, अब भी इनको कह रहा हूं कि आप एनर्जी प्राइसेस को हाइटेंड रखिए। आपका एनर्जी बिल फ्रॉम दिस $24 अरब हैज टू गो डाउन टू समवेयर इन द बॉल पार्क ऑफ 17-18 अरब, सो यू सेव अबाउट $6 billion देयर। यू हैव टू बी वेरी कॉन्क्रीट इन नंबर्स। थोड़ी देर मैं IMF पे भी आता हूं बिकॉज ये दोनों MEFP जो है ये इनिशियली मेरे हाथ के लिखे हुए हैं। सो एक तो यह कि ये वेरी क्लियरली इसको। नंबर 2, करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट रन करना प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट को फाइनेंस करना प्रॉब्लम है। अगर आपके पास कैपेसिटी नहीं है फाइनेंस करने की, तो उस साल में आप अपना करंट अकाउंट डेफिसिट $17.5 अरब का पिछले साल रन करके आए हैं। रिजर्व्स $20 अरब थे अगस्त 2021 को, और आज फंड के बावजूद $7.8 अरब पे आ गए हैं। सो नंबर 2, आपका इस साल का करंट अकाउंट आप $9.3 बिलियन लेके चले थे। मैं नहीं समझता कि वो शायद पूरा कर पाएंगे आप। सो समवेयर बिटवीन 12-13 अरब डॉलर आपका इंक्रीज हुआ, पर 12 से इंक्रीज ना होने दें। दैट्स योर नंबर 2। सो योर 6 बिलियन सेविंग इन द petroleum, your current account running a bit higher but still 5 billion lower than last year. So very clearly, आपको बिल्कुल fundamental numbers, ये पाकिस्तान के नंबर बहुत आसान है, इसको करने में कोई इतना वो नहीं। नंबर 3 में आता हूं, आप हैरान होंगे क्यों मैं एग्रीकल्चर की अब इतनी बात करता हूं। $10 अरब का फूड बिल था लास्ट ईयर। जून में हमने सबसे बड़ी अपनी फूड की इंपोर्ट की है $1 अरब की। अभी हमें फ्लड ने हिट नहीं किया था। Where are your Pakistan Agriculture Research Council? Where are your NARCs? Where are your universities? ये तो आपको कम से कम डील करना है ना। नंबर 4, कंजर्वेशन स्ट्रैटेजी। मैं अभी फ्रांस से आ रहा हूं एंड उन्होंने हमें इंस्ट्रक्शंस दी हुई हैं। मैं फ्रेंच गवर्नमेंट में एक इकोनॉमिक मिनिस्ट्री में काम कर रहा था, तो उन्होंने कहा कि यार वी मस्ट हैव अ स्ट्रॉन्ग कंजर्वेशन स्ट्रैटेजी। आईफिल टावर की बत्तियां जल्दी बंद कर दें, ऑप्टिक्स के लिए अच्छा होगा। कल मैं लाहौर के रोड्स पे गया और मैं हैरान हुआ कि उन्होंने नई बत्तियां लगाई हुई थी बिकॉज वी वर गोइंग मे बी वी हैव एक्सेस एनर्जी। एवरी एनर्जी इज बीइंग पेड इन डॉलर्स। वेयर इज योर कंजर्वेशन स्ट्रेटजी फॉर द पास्ट 3 months? आई मीन यू शुड हैव हैड वन, राइट? ये तो एक नो ब्रेनर है ना इस वक्त। जर्मनी इज कटिंग डाउनवर्ड। सो ये नंबर चौथी बात है। नंबर 4, वर्ल्ड बैंक ने सिर्फ ये कहा है कि मैं रीपर्पस कर रहा हूं $2 बिलियन के। आई वुड हैव गॉन हॉल हॉग विद देम एंड आस्क्ड देम कि नो, मुझे कंसेशनल विंडोज आप ओपन करें इस वक्त, क्योंकि मुझे ये टाइम राइड आउट करना है। दी ओनली कंसेशनल विंडो जो ओपन हुई है वो $1.5 अरब की हुई है, जो एडीबी ने आपको की है। सो दैट्स वेलकम, बट यू शुड हैव गॉन। फिर आपका बायलैटरल 20 से $25 अरब है आपके पास, आप उसकी बिल्कुल रीशेड्यूलिंग में जाएं ताकि ये 3 साल के लिए बोझ जो है आप पे कम हो जाए। और याद रखिए कि वो सिग्नल गलत हो गया पेरिस क्लब का सारा, उस वजह से इट गॉट डिस्टर्ब। पेरिस क्लब या इवन जो है चले आप बायलैटरल कर लें, डज नॉट मीन कि हम बॉन्ड या कमर्शियल पे पीछे हट रहे हैं। ये ऐसा कभी नहीं हुआ। पाकिस्तान ने 2001 में भी पेरिस क्लब रीशेड्यूलिंग की है, हमने ये भी किया। सो अगली चीज जो है आप उसको कीजिए। मुल्क में कोई थोड़ी सी इमरजेंसी तो डिक्लेयर करें ना आप किसी चीज पे। अगर इतना सवियर लिक्विडिटी क्रंच है जो मैं और आप इस वक्त एक्सप्लेन कर रहे हैं, पाकिस्तान का मसला इस वक्त सिर्फ जो है ये है कि ये लिक्विडिटी क्रंच अगले 2-3 साल जाने नहीं वाला, और आपको ये सस्टेनेबल करने के लिए, ये स्टेबिलिटी पैदा करने के लिए आपको ये कुछ करना पड़ेगा। फिर आपको डिपॉजिट कहीं से लेने पड़ेंगे। अब $4 बिलियन फ्रॉम द फ्रेंडली कंट्रीज इज वेलकम एज इन्वेस्टमेंट एंड वी शुड। आप मुझसे पूछे थे एफडीआई 10 अरब क्यों रखी है। मैं जब भी इनके साथ बैठता था तो आप यकीन करें, एंड आई वुड गेट इट डन बाय फोर्स, दे वुड नेवर पुश फॉर प्राइवेटाइजेशन, एंड आई वुड से कि नहीं यार डाइवेस्टमेंट डालो, एंड यू नो एवरीवन वुड से कि डॉक्टर साहब ये तो होनी नहीं है, व्हाई आर यू पुशिंग। आई सेड एटलीस्ट यार इट शुड कम ऑन द एजेंडा। आपके 2 एलएनजी के पावर प्लांट्स हैं, आई एम सॉरी, मतलब 2018 से तो मैं कोशिश कर रहा था कि बिक जाएं। जब अगर उस वक्त बिकते तो शायद उस पे जो कर्जा था वो भी कम होता, और 103 अरब का इस वक्त सर्कुलर डेट खड़ा है, अनइनकम्बर्ड थे। सो आप ये तो हम नहीं कर सकते ना कि हमने कोई डिस्को नहीं सेल करना, हमने एलएनजी पावर प्लांट्स नहीं सेल करने, हमने मतलब चलें एयरलाइन में भी डिफिकल्ट, बट यू नो डिस्को सेल इज नॉट अ वेरी डिफिकल्ट थिंग, और ये आपको करना पड़ेगा। सो दैट्स योर डाइवेस्टमेंट स्ट्रेटजी एज फार एज आई एम थिंकिंग। इफ यू पुट ऑल दिस टुगेदर and again you go to rocks and crops, that's the future of Pakistan. आप मैन्युफैक्चरिंग को कभी भी अपग्रेड करके एप्पल फोन बनाने पे नहीं ला सकते। आई मीन और मेरा नहीं ख्याल कि 3 साल में ला सकते।
आई थिंक दैट पॉइंट इज वेरी वेल टेकन कि ये जो हमें, जब तक हम एग्रीकल्चर में फूड सिक्योरिटी में नहीं लेकर आएंगे तब तक हमारे पास आई थिंक we'll continue to struggle with many things, and there have been so many studies in Pakistan जो कि $10 बिलियन में से सबसे बड़ा आइटम तो आपके पास $4 बिलियन का खूतनी तेल ही है ना, कि आप वो सोयाबीन और ये वाले मंगवा के, I mean you know there have been so many studies that you can actually produce all of this in Pakistan without actually having to, I think एक one time cost है कि मशीनरी को आपने इंपोर्ट करना है, और वो भी आप करने के बाद तो वो हम नहीं कर पाते। I think you know I actually want to sort of you know just quickly go to Dr. Ikram and then sort of you know take the final word from Dr. Salman before we move to Ambassador Nadeem Raza साहब। डॉक्टर साहब, आई थिंक एक जो चीज यहाँ पे भी हमें डॉक्टर खाका ने भी अभी बताई वो ये कि हमारे पास पॉलिसी रिफॉर्म्स जो हम करना चाहते हैं जिस तरह की रिक्वायर्ड है इकोनॉमी को, वो नहीं कर पाते हैं। आई थिंक नथिंग बेटर हाइलाइट्स दिस देन sort of you know our inability to reform our tax policies. You know वो बार-बार पैसे भी मिलते रहते हैं बाहर से, वर्ल्ड बैंक से, डीबी से, हर जगह से हम पैसे भी ले रहते हैं, रिफॉर्म्स के प्रोग्राम भी रहते हैं। क्या चीजें हैं, why is it that sort of you know, and these are, I'm not even talking about sort of कि यार अच्छा आप अमीरों को बहुत ज्यादा टैक्स करते हैं, हम तो सिंपल टैक्स, कॉमन सेंस टैक्स रिफॉर्म्स हैं कि अच्छा आप जनरल सेल्स टैक्स को एक्साइज मोड में नहीं कलेक्ट करें, उसको वैल्यू एडेड मोड में करें, उसका रेट कम करते हैं ताकि लोग का थोड़ा सा, उससे लोग डिस्करेज होते हैं, बिजनेसमैन डिस्करेज होते हैं, उसको कम करके एक्सपैंड करते हैं, बट वी आर इवन अनएबल टू डू दैट। तो आप इफ यू कैन से समथिंग क्विकली ऑन दैट कि क्यों हम इतना स्ट्रगल करते हैं टैक्स रिफॉर्म पॉलिसी के साथ।
बेसिक इशू यही है कि जब टैक्स रिफॉर्म्स आप एफपीआर के हवाले करते हैं तो उनको तो एक आप टारगेट दे देते हैं कि जी ये नंबर है, वो फिर खुद ही डी फैक्टो लेजिस्लेटर भी बने होते हैं और पॉलिसी मेकर्स भी बने होते हैं। हर साल आप देखते हैं कि फाइनेंस बिल जो होता है उसमें वो ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा ऐसी चीज़ें डालते हैं जिससे कि रिफॉर्म्स तो क्या होना बल्कि हम कुछ और पीछे की तरफ जाते हैं। तो मेरा ख्याल है कि ये टैक्स पॉलिसी के इशू और रिफॉर्म्स के, ये तो एफबीआर के पास नहीं होने चाहिए। इसके लिए जब तक आप सेपरेशन नहीं करेंगे और टैक्स पॉलिसी की अपनी अलहदा से जो है वो जहां इसको होनी चाहिए वहां करनी चाहिए, और एक कलेक्शन एजेंसी को कलेक्शन एजेंसी की तरह बिहेव करना चाहिए। इसलिए सारे प्रोग्राम्स आपने देखा वर्ल्ड बैंक से लेकर आज तक जितने भी नाकाम हुए वो हमारे टैक्स रिफॉर्म्स की उसकी बेसिक वजह यही थी कि हम उनसे रिफॉर्म करवाना चाहते हैं जो खुद रिफॉर्म रेजिस्टेंट हैं और उनका वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट है कि ऐसे रिफॉर्म्स ना हो। तो इतनी पावर जो है अगर आपने एफबीआर को दी रखनी है तो फिर तो मेरा नहीं ख्याल पाकिस्तान में कभी भी टैक्स रिफॉर्म्स हो सकेंगे।
नहीं, थैंक यू वेरी मच। आई थिंक दैट पॉइंट इज, तो ये, लेकिन ये पावर जो है कि जी अच्छा हमने एफबीआई से पावर लेना तो मुश्किल काम नहीं है ना। जो लेजिस्लेटिव एक मतलब एक दिन की पार्लियामेंट, आप 15-20 मिनट के अंदर कितने बड़े बड़े लॉज यहाँ पे पास हो जाते हैं। तो इसमें तो ये लॉ पास करने में तो एक आधे दिन का ही काम है ना, तो हम क्यों नहीं पास कर पाते?
ये जो
ये क्या
पास किए हुए हैं उस पर भी अमल दरामद नहीं होता। ये फेडरल बोर्ड ऑफ रेवेन्यू एक्ट 2007 से बना हुआ है और उसमें पॉलिसी बोर्ड का जिक्र है, मगर पता नहीं 20 तो 30 उसमें मिनिस्टर डाले हुए हैं। तो वो ये है कि काम करने की आदत नहीं है, वो लेजिस्लेटर चाहते ही नहीं है कि वो, क्योंकि इस टैक्स सिस्टम से उनका भी काफी वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट है। तो जाहिर है कि वो एक अच्छा जो है वो सादा टैक्स रिफॉर्म्स का सिस्टम क्यों आने देंगे। तो ये पाकिस्तान में बड़े मसाइल हैं जिसपे हम लिखते भी रहते हैं और आपको भी पता है इसके बारे में।
Ji, thank you very much. Dr. Salman Shah, I would like to come to you and for sort of, for if you can quickly, give us your concluding thoughts on this. But I think कि एक तो जो concluding remarks में चाहूंगा कि आप जिसके ऊपर बात करें वो ये कि आप हमारे पास ये जो अभी भी जिस डॉक्टर खाकान ने भी बात की कि एनर्जी को हमें रिफॉर्म करना है, एंड वी कीप थिंकिंग अबाउट सॉर्ट ऑफ रिफॉर्मिंग, we keep hearing about the word reforms कि energy के अंदर reforms कर लें. I have even actually heard it from sort of people who work in the inside कि ये तो बस 3 साल का काम है और अगर हम commitment show करते हैं. और मुझे समझ में नहीं आती कि if you compare let's say the आपकी जो cost of production है खास तौर पे जो furnace oil के ऊपर based है वो और हमारे पास जो furnace oil के ऊपर plants हैं, फिर हमारे पास जो LNG के ऊपर plants हैं, इनकी cost of production जो है ये it has gone up substantially. I mean between 94 when the first power plant was introduced in Pakistan, so the first independent power plant policy was introduced in Pakistan, and now furnace oil prices have actually gone up by 3,000%, right? Between LNG जो पिछले 6-7-8 साल में 3 सालों में जो शाहिद खाकान अब्बासी साहब ने, प्राइम मिनिस्टर शाहिद खाकान अब्बासी ने जो कि $11 पर यूनिट के ऊपर LNG के कॉन्ट्रैक्ट किए थे, वो कोई अब आजकल $54 पर यूनिट के ऊपर इसकी लेटेस्ट प्राइस है. तो within 3 years this has gone up. What kind of reforms can actually internalize and account for such rapid increases in and such drastic increases in cost of production? There's something that because ये दोनों हमारी consumption side के ऊपर भी domestic household consumption है उसके ऊपर भी उसके ऊपर भी effect करता है, और हमारी इंडस्ट्री के अंदर जो एक consumption है इलेक्ट्रिसिटी की उसके ऊपर भी इम्पैक्ट करता है. And you have spent a lot of time in the government as well. What are sort of, I think the key stumbling block in our efforts to reform this whole energy infrastructure and somehow sort of, rationalize costs and prices?
I think there are lots of questions जो अब आ चुके हैं, and I think we need to put some kind of response to this. एक तो ये है कि हमारी बातचीत में जो इन्वेस्टमेंट फोकस है ना वो नहीं है, क्योंकि पाकिस्तान में हम वी कैन टॉक अबाउट टैक्सेस एंड वी टॉक अबाउट ऑल द अदर थिंग्स एंड द रोल ऑफ द गवर्नमेंट, और गवर्नमेंट का हैवी हैंड एंड ऑल दैट इज देयर, बट इन्वेस्टमेंट जो है वो नहीं है. और इन्वेस्टमेंट में खाकान वुड नो कि 2006 में वी हैड ऑलमोस्ट $8 billion ऑफ फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट, जिसके नतीजे में हमने IMF का प्रोग्राम वक्त से पहले ख़त्म कर लिया था, क्योंकि हमारे सारे जो थे कंडीशनैलिटीज़ भी पूरी हो गई थी, टारगेट्स भी पूरे हो गए थे, एंड वी हैड लॉट ऑफ लिक्विडिटी इन टर्म्स ऑफ डॉलर्स बिकॉज ऑफ द फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट. सो फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट क्लाइमेट जो है ना इसके ऊपर तो हुकूमतों का कोई फोकस रहा ही नहीं. अब आई रियली कम टू दैट पार्ट ऑफ इट कि एक तो है कि हमारी जितनी इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं ये फॉसिलाइज्ड हैं, और ये जो खाकान कह रहा है रॉक्स एंड क्रॉप्स जो हैं, योर इंस्टीट्यूशंस आर इनकेपेबल ऑफ डूइंग एनीथिंग इन दैट एरिया. और हमारी जो एग्रीकल्चर इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं, फ्रॉम यूब एग्रीकल्चर रिसर्च टू द नेशनल एग्रीकल्चर, I mean they are fossilized and they are living in the last century. और उसमें brotherly system and all the ills of our society are, it's an epidemic in the agriculture sector, and so is it in every other sector. So basically it boils down to कि why are we in this mess? और मेरे ख्याल में जो आपने last point raise की है, it is because we lack a vision. Our leadership lacks a vision. What is the अब आप देखें कि इस वक्त जो सबसे बड़ा हमारा लिए नेशनल सिक्योरिटी थ्रेट है वो हमारी इकोनॉमी है। और अगर आप you just do the numbers, I mean, if you look at India has just crossed and become the 6th largest economy in the world, or 2050 तक they will be the number 2 or number 3 economy of the world, जो उनकी trajectory जा रही है। और हमारी जो trajectory है तो हम तो 26 क्या, हम तो कोई 30, 35, 40, we are going in the opposite direction. So the question is, do we have a vision in which पाकिस्तान की इकोनॉमी को आप कह सकें कि जी ये भी दुनिया की छठी सबसे बड़ी आबादी है, and by 2050 we will be the 6th largest economy in the world, और हमारा per capita income would be at par with at least India in 2050. और अभी आप देख लें हमारा per capita income हम पीछे हैं। 2007 में when I was there we were ahead of them. And now we are behind them, and that is a very big problem. It's a problem of management, it's a problem of leadership, it's a problem of vision. और अगर आपकी vision सही हम करने में कामयाब हो जाते हैं, which vision basically means कि आपने ये stable growth with stability का जो आपका है ये आपने करना है, but growth with stability does not mean कि 5-6% growth. If you have the size of your population and the workforce which is coming in and the youth bulge, तो आपको तो डबल डिजिट ग्रोथ चाहिए, आपको तो उस किस्म की ग्रोथ चाहिए जो जापान और चीन ने और कोरिया ने और इन मुल्कों ने की एट देयर इनिशियल लेवल्स ऑफ डेवलपमेंट। तो उसके लिए आपको बहुत ज्यादा फोकस्ड तरीके से काम करने की जरूरत है। उसके साथ साथ आपको सारी जितनी आपकी इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं इनको रिफॉर्म करना, इनको मेरिट बेस्ड बनाना, और जो जिनकी जरूरत नहीं है उनको फारग करना है। सो आई थिंक दैट इज वेरी वेरी क्रिटिकल, एंड वी हैव टू डिसाइड कि क्या रोल जो है हुकूमत का। अभी भी हम बात करते हैं, मिफ्ता साहब ने बिलियंस के टैक्सेस लगा दिए हैं, टू डू व्हाट? To raise money and put it into the government sector, जो कि सबसे inefficient sector है। So वो भी हम I think we really need to cut down the size of the government.
I would actually now move to I think His Excellency Ambassador Nadeem Riaz Saab. I think and I would actually just जो segue है, I think वो डॉक्टर सलमान शाह ने हमें जो एक प्रोवाइड किया कि जो हमारे पास आपके the biggest threat to our national security is perhaps our economy now. It's I think that जो हम जो internal threats की बात करते हैं उसमें हमें एक threat हमारा economic structure जो है उसको भी शामिल कर लेना चाहिए। And Ambassador Nadeem Riaz जो है, he's been a career diplomat. He's worked from 1985 to 2020 till in the Foreign Office. So I think he's the most suitable person to have sort of to actually comment on this, क्योंकि इनकी बहुत unique insights होंगी. So Ambassador Saab, we would like to come to you now and sort of talk about कि हमारी जो national internal जो economic security है वो हमारे पास खास तौर पे हमारे foreign relations का और foreign policy का एजेंडा हमें सामने के तौर पे तो इतना बड़ा नजर नहीं आता। We focused on many other things rather than sort of ensuring that we become economically secure and safe. So what are the ways in which we can actually mend this, and sort of your thoughts overall about this, about the economy as well?
Thank you very much. You see, the basic thing is that your national security is closely associated with your economic security. This is something which is absolutely essential, because unless and until you are economically not secure, then you cannot have a proactive foreign policy. The basic thing is that we are a country which is placed in a situation where, as Dr. Salman Shah rightly put it, everything which happens globally, that has an effect on us. And the region in which we are located, it's a region where the situation is always complex. You have an adversarial relationship with India, you have a difficult relationship with Afghanistan, you have a less than normal relationship with Iran, and then obviously you are these days caught also in the part tussle between the United States and China. Saying all that, our basic problem in my opinion, after serving 36 years in the government, is not of making policies. I think Pakistan makes one of the best policies. Our problem lies in implementation. As far as making the papers dark and black is concerned, we are very good at it. But when it comes to implementing, there is a problem. One. The second thing is we have issues of governance. The third thing is we have management issues. Then political instability does not help. We are a country which is basically a consumption society. Our saving rate is probably the lowest in the region, if not in the world, one of the lowest in the world. And then so much has been discussed about the tax base. One, the tax base is very narrow. We continue to tax the people who already are paying the taxes rather than to increase the tax base. I would humbly disagree with a particular thing that, like, if the rate of taxation is reduced, people will start paying the taxes, because I don't think we have developed a culture in which people are geared towards paying taxes. We get into bilateral agreements, we get into multilateral agreements. Just like Ikram Saab said that, like, we completed only one IMF program, which was in 2016. But at the same time, we cannot stay out of the fund program in the present situation we are in, which I think has a lot to do with the global situation, with the regional situation, and our own domestic political situation. Obviously, we call ourselves an agrarian economy. Unfortunately, we have not been able to increase our yield per acre, which happens to be pretty low, because I worked with the World Food Program and the FAO. Our biggest problem also is that, we do not conserve the stuff which we have. Whether it is water, we are fast becoming a country which is going to be water scarce. And like, we are in a situation where we are not even conserving energy. And then you being economist, you would completely understand that people only make investments in a country where there is one, political stability. Secondly, there is a continuity of policy. Policies can fluctuate, but they don't change radically with the change of the government, because policies are made in the national interest of a country. Take, for example, the policy on the solar panels. Like, one day there is great amount of concessions which the government wants to give, the other day it wants to withdraw it. So, like, when you have such policies which are so oscillating, how do you expect people to, make investments? I would agree with Dr. Hakan when he said that, like, you need to renegotiate your bilateral and multilateral agreements. I think it's important. Countries do understand. Yes, we perpetually have a dollar liquidity crunch, which is perpetual. I really like the word which you use, perpetual, because it's all there. Dr. Shah, like, he is spot on. And sir, you are absolutely correct that, we are a country which is perpetually in a crisis situation as far as the energy and as far as the food shortages are concerned, because from a food abundant country, we have become a country which is, as per projections of the World Food Program and some American think tanks, we are going to be 38% of our population who is going to be food insufficient. So I couldn't agree with you more, sir, that when you said that, we lack a vision. Because the policies which need to be made are not to be made for today. You have to look forward to 10 years, because please don't forget that at the same time, we are a country which has a growth rate of 2.4% as far as the population is concerned. And like, it is one thing which I don't know why it is not discussed. This morning, I was in a seminar on food security and population, and people find it difficult to discuss contraception, even in today's time and age. Because unless and until we are able to cap our population at some level, regardless of how much we grow, every day we will be having much more hungry mouths to feed. We definitely need to make long-term policies. We need to increase our tax base. We need to harmonize and try to bring harmony among our fiscal debt, uh, our development of our industrial sector, and over there also, like, we import a lot of raw material. So, like, when you talk about increasing your industrial productivity, that also is an issue. And then how can you increase your industrial productivity when, like, the the person who is the manufacturer has to pay a very high rate of buying the energy, which is also not certain. So, and to complicate matters much more, we have a thing which always people refer to as the youth bulge. Oh, the youth bulge is Pakistan's asset. I think, sir, it's going to become a liability if we don't take care of it. Because, fine, they are the young people, but you actually need to train them. Maybe like we need to put more stress on vocational training rather than to just produce BAs and MAs in history and art and culture, which is perfect. I mean, it's okay. But like, these are not the people who are going to give a boost to your industry or to your agriculture or to your economy. We need specialists. We need a workforce, which is a potent for workforce, which can compete internationally. And so being associated with the Foreign Office for a long time, I mean, now when we go and talk to countries and talk to people, please take our labor force. The first question is, how competent are they? So, like, these are some of the issues which we need to tackle. And yes, working with international organizations associated with food security and all, I think we really need to concentrate on our agriculture industry, because we need to increase our yield per acre. There are many reasons for that. Like, one can go into the details of that. But like, our leaders should develop a vision and policies which fire on all these three important sectors. It's industry, it's agriculture, and it is the human resource. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you very much for these for I think perfectly wrapping up the conversation. हमारे पास बहुत सारी चीजें जो है इस conversation के अंदर आई हैं जो हमारी economy को challenge कर रही हैं. I think one of the एक जो issue one of the things that डॉक्टर खाकान ने भी ये बात कही कि हमारे पास जो है हमारी जो एग्रीकल्चर की यील्ड है वो 1/3 है जो दुनिया के बेस्ट हैं. तो हम कहता हूँ कि आप बेस्ट को अगर आप एक साइड पे भी रख दें और आप सिर्फ पंजाब इंडियन पंजाब और पाकिस्तानी पंजाब की यील्ड्स का भी कंपैरिजन कर लें, क्योंकि दोनों में सॉइल क्वालिटी एक जैसी है, दोनों में बहुत सारी टेक्निक्स भी एक जैसी हैं मोर लेस, लेकिन फिर भी जो है हमारी जो यील्ड क्वालिटी है वो बेतहाशा कम है. एंड आई थिंक उसके अंदर बहुत सारे जो हमारे जो कुछ पॉलिटिक्स है जिसके ऊपर हम सीरियसली बात ही नहीं कर पाते, जिसके ऊपर उसके अंदर एक और बहुत बड़ी वजह ये है एग्रीकल्चर आउटपुट में कि 90% of your farms are basically just small farms, right? So these are farms that are less than 12.5 acres. उसके अंदर कोई भी बंदा इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं कर सकता. तो either we come up with sort of अब ये तो इस अब मुझे honestly speaking थोड़ी सी embarrassment भी होती है कि हमें ये चीज भी radical solution के तौर पे अब प्रमोट करनी पड़ती है कि यार आप ये जो फार्मर्स छोटे हैं इनके कोऑपरेटिव्स बनाना शुरू कर दें ताकि आप कुछ लैंड का साइज बड़ा करें, इनकी भी यील्ड्स बढ़े, इनके रिटर्न्स बढ़े और आप इनके ऊपर कुछ इन्वेस्टमेंट तो कर सकेंगे ना. अब 4 एकड़ के ऊपर 5 एकड़ के ऊपर तो कोई भी इन्वेस्टमेंट नहीं करेगा, चाहे वो छोटा फार्मर हो चाहे वो बड़ा फार्मर हो वगैरह. तो आई थिंक दीज आर सब हमारे पास जो एक पॉलिटिकल ग्रिडलॉक है हमारे अब जिसमें वी हैव एक्चुअली इन द पास्ट 6 months अनफॉर्चुनेटली हम सब लोग फंसे हुए हैं. उसके अंदर जब तक कोई तब्दीली नहीं आएगी तो वी वुड एक्चुअली फाइंड इट वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू मूव आउट ऑफ द डिफिकल्ट इकोनॉमिक सिचुएशन दैट वी कीप फाइंडिंग आवरसेल्व्स इन. So I think thank you very much. On that note, I would like to thank everybody, all the participants, Dr. Salman Shah, who's not here, Dr. Kamul Haq, Dr. Khakan, Najib Saab, and sort of Ambassador Nadeem Riaz Saab, you especially. But I would also like to thank Copair and IRS, Institute of Regional Studies, to hold this important conversation. And I think particularly thank Ms. Amna being the president of Copair, about what you said in the beginning. I think it's very important कि ये हम जो है कुछ closed conversations करें economy पे, जिसके ऊपर आप खुल के बहुत openly बात कर सकें कि issues क्या हैं. And you talk to them sort of, you have hold this conversation with people who are working in the policy area, so that they can sort of, have, so when they go and interact with the government, they sort of, go with some sense of what, a lot of other experts are thinking about the economy, and how to move forward with it. So I think, on that note, I would like to thank everybody again, and I would like to hand over the mic to Ms. Amna. If you would like to say some final words and wrap this meeting up.
Thank you very much, everyone, and thank you very much IRS and my Copair team that they did a wonderful job, and Fahad Ali. It was basically the idea was that there should be a series of sessions and roundtables, and then all of you are welcome if you have any some suggestions, some recommendations. So you can send us an email, and inshallah we'll keep on inviting you. Thank you very much, all.